This is our third year collaborating very closely with the Venture Forum and hosting events here on campus, and we always enjoy these events. They are a lot of fun, and there's always great content and material that we get to share together, and that's always exciting for us. Just a little bit about our program for anyone in the room that's not familiar. The entrepreneurship program here on our campus is presently an undergraduate program, and it is a minor here on our campus. So students can take courses within our program, and we welcome students from all majors to take the entrepreneurship courses that we offer, because we truly do believe in teaching the entrepreneurial way of thinking and mindset for students. And it makes for some very engaging conversations in our classroom when we put traditional management students next to studio art and geography and international development students and psychology majors. It's really fun, and our instructors really do enjoy the spirited dialogue that we have in our classes. Our coursework is actually taught by what are called entrepreneurs in residence, and they are practitioners, which is also very exciting. Our students enjoy the fact that they are learning from actual real-life entrepreneurs, to quote them. And people who do this work every day, they get really excited about that because they really do see that real-world connection. Our program is presently housed, and we have a new home. We are in the School of Management, so that's also an exciting opportunity for us as a growth for our program. We're hiring our first full-time faculty members to start this upcoming fall, and the whole process of doing that and making that move is that we actually are going to be growing our program into not just being a program that services undergraduate students, but also graduate students, which is very exciting for us. So we'll be able to help all Clark students here on our campus really take that entrepreneurial spirit and run with it. So we're very excited about that. So enough about my program. I'm actually going to turn the mic over to Ed. And Ed, if you want to come on up and get us started with the actual program. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ed Leary, and I am the chairman of the program committee this year. And we're very excited to be here. We always are. We love coming to Clark. Entrepreneurship is alive and well in the Worcester area, and that's due in no small part to what Amy and her staff are doing here at the Innovation and Entrepreneurship program at Clark. It's one of the reasons why Forbes magazine has cited them as one of the most entrepreneurial universities in the country. They're on a short list with those other schools that you may have heard of. So it's quite an honor. So we love collaborating with Amy and Clark University. So thank you very much for having us again. Tonight's program, as you have seen from the program, is on your target market. And this is something that vexes a lot of entrepreneurs. They get so focused and they spend so much time developing their product or their technology that they give short shrift to how they're actually going to sell that when they get to that stage. So tonight's program should be really interesting for those of you that may not have given it a lot of thought yet. But believe me, it is a critical thing for you to get your arms around. Before we get started, today being Veterans Day, could I ask any veterans of our armed services to please stand so we could thank you for your service? The Venture Forum is a 501c3 educational organization, and the sole purpose of this organization is to support, encourage entrepreneurs, and provide them with educational opportunities so that they can come to our programs and they can learn some valuable lessons from some very seasoned, experienced, and successful entrepreneurs like our speaker tonight. We also want to let you know that we're an all-volunteer organization. The Venture Forum, none of these programs would run without the dedication of our committees and our committee members. So could I just ask George Burdick, who heads our marketing committee. George, stick your hand up. These are great opportunities if you want to get involved in marketing, you want to work on your marketing skills and meet some great people. It's a great opportunity for you to do that. As I said, run the program committee. If you have any interest in reaching out to entrepreneurs and experts in these various disciplines, let me know. We'd love to have you. And Gina Betty, who runs our sponsorship, which is a critical part of the organization. Gina, you can talk to Gina if you have some interest in that. Gina knows everybody in the world, so I would strongly encourage you to get to know Gina. And the last thing that I want to let you know is at these programs, we give entrepreneurs an opportunity to come up, get the microphone, and give you a 1-minute elevator pitch. So we have a room full of people here, includes service providers, attorneys, accountants, investors, maybe somebody with some experience that might be able to help you out as a consultant. So it's a great opportunity for you to get your 1-minute pitch out in front of an audience, and if nothing else, it gives you an opportunity to practice that 1-minute pitch. So see me at any time after I step down off the stage. I'll take down a couple pieces of information from you, and then after the break, you'll get an opportunity to come up here and do your 1-minute pitch. And now on to the program. Our keynote speaker tonight is exactly the kind of keynote speaker we love to have here at the Venture Forum. Steve Metzger, who is currently at ZV, has a great combination of experience starting companies as an entrepreneur, as well as some great experience with some of the larger technology companies, those household words. I won't read you his whole bio, but Steve is here to share the lessons that he's learned over a very interesting and distinguished career. Steve?
Well, thanks for the intro, Ed. I appreciate the opportunity to come and share some of that experience with you tonight. And thanks again, veterans. I do appreciate the service. I was in the reserves myself, so I don't really count as a true veteran, but I appreciate your service. Tonight's topic is choosing your market. Hopefully some of my experience will be useful to some of you in some way once we get through it. So what qualifies me to speak to you tonight? I've got about 22 years of startup experience here in the Boston area. 4 different startups over the last 22 years. I started life as a degreed electrical engineer. I graduated from Norwich University, the Military College of Vermont, a proud fighting cadet. I started work at Digital Equipment Corporation back in the late 80s, or as my kids like to say, back in the 1900s, as a graphics chip designer, and then worked from graphics into networking. And networking was really a theme for a lot of the companies and the ventures that came forth after that. Just to set expectations about what I'm going to talk about tonight, this is about choosing your market. I'm not going to give you a survey of markets. I wouldn't suppose that I could come in here and be so presumptuous to tell you which markets you should address. What I can do is tell you about the ventures that I've been involved in, the challenges we faced, the markets we looked at, and what we had to do to take these ventures and really point them in the right direction and make sure they worked or didn't. And we'll see how they all turned out. You do have to choose a market. That's what it's all about. You're going to point whatever you're doing at some market, try to capitalize on it. But once you've chosen your market, then you really have to listen to what your market tells you all along the way. And we'll talk about that. I'll show you some of my experience. So effectively, what I have with my 4 different companies is 4 different case studies, and we can kind of look at what went well and what went poorly in there. My first one was a company called Applied Network Technology. This was back in the early 90s, well before the dot-com boom. This was, I think, 1991, 1992. I was working at Digital. AOL had just started. There was no internet or World Wide Web. I was a networking engineer, and we didn't really know it, but we knew networking was growing and about to explode. I was in Digital. Digital was on its decline. And we were having trouble getting projects started in Digital, so we said, well, we know what the company needs. Let's go out and do it ourselves, and then try to sell it back into Digital. So that was our business plan. Believe it or not, that's the extent of it. Not a lot of thought went into that. What we were going to do was build an Ethernet switch for DEC before there was such a thing or anyone really knew what an Ethernet switch was. We had an enabling technology, we're doing some things with the graphics and the chips, and thought that we were smart guys, and we were then going to build this thing and sell it back into DEC. I started it with my best friend, my manager from DEC. We funded it completely on a shoestring. We went out, we rented some office space that someone had a friend who had a friend, and went out and did that. Didn't take a salary for 9 months. Truly naive. It was just, I was 27. Didn't know a whole lot back then. In terms of the context of choosing your market, we really didn't choose a market in this case. We chose a set of customers that we were going to go after. So it's not as though we were thinking broadly. We thought that we were going to develop this thing. We're smart guys. We're going to sell it to HP, DEC, Compaq, and IBM, and they'll buy it. So we were very arrogant. We thought we were a lot smarter than we were. This was probably the most valuable learning experience. The outcome of this was probably monetarily not at all satisfying, because I ended up one mortgage payment away from asking my parents for a loan. But in terms of experience, I probably learned more about working with people at this than I did in any other venture. And you can probably guess the outcome of this one with the background that I've set there. So, once I was broke, I had to go get a real job. I went to Chipcom, which was a networking company down in Southborough, doing Ethernet networking. Spent 3 years there, made a lot of good connections with folks. And, people and networking and getting to know the folks, that's what it's all about. You need to connect with the right people to get things done. So we had a group of folks I linked up with, a common interest, and we went out and from Chipcom was bought by 3Com. 3Com was sort of not paying attention, dropping the ball. So once again, we said, well, we can go out and let's build a switch that, again, would be needed. I was at Chipcom involved in 100 meg Ethernet development, the standards, and then moving into gigabit Ethernet when that was brand new. And so being involved at the very beginning of the technology, we said, okay, if we can go to market with the very first gigabit switch that is out there, as soon as the standard is available and things interoperate together, we've got almost a guaranteed market. .com was just starting. The internet boom was there. People wanted more and more and more bandwidth. So this was a straight up and down execution play. And there was no need for home networking. These were all pointed at corporate networking environments. Unlike my first venture, my lesson was don't spend all your own money or drive yourself into bankruptcy. This was a conventional startup at the time where we took venture money, took a lot of it, Charles, Matrix, Menlo, and we had a very simple pitch in this case. It was we wanted to have the first interoperable, scalable gigabit Ethernet switch on the market. We had some enablers, and I'll talk more about enablers in a little bit, but you always need enablers to make sure your idea is going to go forward. We had smart guys, we knew Ethernet, we were involved in the standards right up front, and there was a technology that we thought we could apply to that problem, this Toshiba ASIC line that was a very low access. The cost was low, the technology was great. It was going to allow us to be first to market with this product. So, we'll talk more about some of the challenges with the company, but the bottom line here is it worked. This company was purchased by Lucent in 1998, $240 million. It was still in the upswing of the .com boom, so it was a very successful outcome. And definitely a beneficiary of the .com craziness that was going on at the time there. Straight up and down execution play. You got a good idea, you got a good team, well-funded, out you go, make sure you finish. Spent some time at Lucent before the word Lucent became a dirty word. It was a high flyer back then. About 3 years there, working on more networking products, working from layer 2 and layer 3 switching into layer 4 switching and how to do that. And Lucent, they climbed steeply and then dropped off precipitously again. So it sort of got the itch again. It's time to do something new. Another group of folks went out and formed yet another company, Nauticus Networks. Basically is this kind of an evolutionary growth. We started with layer 2 and 3 switching with Prominent, and said, okay, so now you can switch on layer 2, layer 3. Let's go up to layer 4 switching, which is application and customer and virtualization, segmenting things so you're not just switching on addressing information, you're switching on what's going on, the information on the network, the users, and it was really a first start of virtualization. So if that seems a little vague to you, It was a little vague to our customers as well. A lot of people found it vague that way. It was not a well-defined elevator pitch. It was more of a cab ride pitch. So that it was a tough sell, and it was overly ambitious. Being a virtualized, secure application layer switch, the people who understood and really had application for that were very, very few. Sun Microsystems was one of them. So we sold to Sun. They were building big data centers, and basically for $40 million, that was like the acquisition cost of the company. They bought it at cost. That was what had been invested in the company at that time. So, you know, in hindsight, that's a mercy killing. We got out what was put in. They took care of the people okay, but they were really buying it for the technology and the people. They didn't really care about the products. The world had changed underneath us. But it is a lesson, and we did ignore a lot of the good fundamentals that are probably talked about in this forum quite a bit. We didn't have a good elevator pitch. We didn't have a very defined market. We were shooting way beyond what, in reality, folks were really after here. So I spent some time at Sun, and it was good. I got back to basics, building some scalable computing systems. But, you know, again, after spending a few years there, I got the itch to try something completely different again, and linked up with some folks outside. The internet certainly is mature at this point. This is 2007. TV was starting to show up on the internet, YouTube and Hulu and Netflix and all this stuff was out there. So we said, okay, let's do something merging internet and television and a consumer-oriented product. I'd never done a consumer-oriented product. So we started out ZV. At the time it was Zazzle. It had a different name, trying to stay stealthy and all that. The idea being to get internet television to your internet content to your television, so watching the internet was as easy as watching your TV. And that ultimately led to the name ZV, which is, hey, you know, what's on ZV? You wanted to watch the internet like television. We started in 2007, quickly developed the product, and then we launched it in 2008, right into one of the deepest recessions that we've had in modern memory. So we had a luxury consumer electronics item coming out right about the time where the economy was imploding. Not a good time to be launching that sort of thing. So, you know, we'll talk a little bit more in a bit about market adaptation. You know, we could have been dead at that point in time. We could have closed the doors in 2009 and said this is a failed experiment in the consumer market. But we did morph the company and became a commercial video equipment provider. Took the same technology, the same ideas, turned it around, pointed it at a market that actually was buying things and growing. So really the application for the products today is any place where there's video that you want to get to a large number of screens in sort of any venue there. So we started with something small, and you know, the product on the left there, this is this slick consumer thing that was supposed to go in your house, and we have since morphed into heavy iron that's installed in hotels and campuses and things like that. The company is still growing, it's profitable, we've launched international products, and this is, I think this year, just passed my longest job ever at 7 years. So it's kind of not just a startup at that point, now it's actually maturing the company into a real company. So, you know, I've talked a bit about the companies. Now, you know, let's talk about some of the key elements and kind of synthesize this into a message about markets and stick on point for what we're here to talk about tonight. Every time I've done a startup, there's got to be 4 things that I can identify here. Obviously, you need the idea. The idea you have, that's what you're basing the thing that you're doing on. It's got to be a good one. It's got to be something that's going to excite folks and make them want to buy. And the key to the idea, and I've learned this, I didn't always know this, is you've got to be able to express that idea in 1 sentence or 2, or you know, a paragraph at the max. In 2 minutes, you have to convince people, or better yet, have them convince themselves based on what you're saying that they're going to want whatever it is you're putting together. And so the idea, and you have to be able to express it concisely. If you have to educate the customer, the people you're trying to sell stuff to, or worse yet, argue or convince them that they need this thing you're doing, you're lost. Just give it up, simplify, get back to the core message. So the idea above the market or the team or anything else, that is the most important thing. And then every successful startup that I've been involved in or known about has had an enabler, which is something that you're going to have or need to apply that's going to let you solve whatever problem you're pointing at better than anyone else around you. What is it you're going to be able to do that no one else can? It's some technology or method or just a very, very fast head start. In the case of Prominent, we had this Toshiba rocket line. We were in at the very beginning of a technology. In the case of Nauticus, we had access to network processors that no one else had access to from IBM at the time. In the case of ZV, we took a processor that was being used for phased array sonar processing and then used it for video encoding. Because it turns out the computation needed for phased array processing was almost directly applicable to MPEG encoding for video. So there's got to be some enabler that is going to allow you to do whatever you're trying to do better than other people starting out in a big company that may be already established. So that's a key element. And of course, the team, everyone talks about team. You do need an excellent team to execute on this idea. I wouldn't even get started unless you knew you had access to the people and the resources required to execute on an idea. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have subject matter experts at your disposal or on your payroll. That can actually work against you. We're doing this TV product now, and I didn't know anything about broadcasting TV, so we went out and hired a circuit guy that did TV circuits. And he did a transmission circuit for us. It was great, worked well, but it was completely unmanufacturable because it was designed for broadcasting TV, and here we're trying to do a consumer product for tens of dollars, not tens of thousands of dollars. So yeah, he was a subject matter expert, and the subject that he came up with, or the solution he came up with, was totally unusable. So a couple of guys said, okay, well, now that we understand how it's done, let's look at TVs, which are more mimicking the model that we wanted to emulate in terms of the numbers. Look at how they're doing it, look at how he did it, and try to apply their methods to his solution and come up with something that we actually could use. So you have to have a team that can execute, but also recognize the limitations of the team. And when you're building a team to do the startup, this last point is very, very important. Invariably, you're starting and you're doing something from scratch. You're going to be operating efficiently on limited funds and a shoestring. You really don't have any room to carry anyone excess along. So everyone has to be operating at a very, very high level. If someone's not, you're not doing them any favors or the company any favors by carrying them along. You're going to create resentment. You have to fix that. And then we get to the market. You really have to know who it is that you're selling to. And most importantly is you need to validate your idea. When you finish building or making this thing that you set out to, who's going to buy it? You have to sit down and think about not just abstractly who, but who exactly. Who is it that's going to be making the decision to purchase and then writing the actual check, and how are they going to get approval and whatnot. For us, most recently was with ZV, is we're doing a consumer product. We learned along the way that we're selling probably to a gadget guy in the house, and what we learned is this magic threshold, $299, where below $299, the male of the house can make a buying decision without getting family approval. Above $299, then it becomes a group process. And we learned this the hard way, that definitely put a cap on where we are. So we didn't know that. We learned that along the way and knew we were going to have challenges. But this was thinking about the market and who actually we were selling to, the individual. And the other point about evaluating this is you can't get caught up in also sniffing your own exhaust and thinking that because we're smart guys, we're doing this better than anyone else in the world. You have to test the idea, and the best test is not you because you're invested in this thing, but getting someone from the outside to test it. This can be tricky because you're doing something that you want to keep secret and not necessarily have other folks be aware of, but you really do need to have someone from the outside evaluate what you're doing because you may be completely off your rocker. Preferably it's someone that's going to be involved in buying the product. How do you find that? I don't know. For us, finding consumer products, it's kind of easy. You can find technology nerds. For corporate products, maybe you find someone who's purchasing the equipment and you can promise them early access to the product or a discount or something. But getting that validation is so valuable that it is important to get it early on and continuously. And then ask yourself, if I was in their shoes, would I actually buy this thing? And be honest with yourself. you have to do this almost continuously, and you folks being the leaders in the venture that you're starting, it's your job, it's your duty to do this to make sure that you're not spinning off the rail, and you have to be brutally honest with yourself. The other big piece, and this is the hardest thing that I personally have had to do, but it's probably the most valuable thing, is you're going to start trying to do something, and we always have, but you don't finish in zero time. And while you're developing, the world is moving along around you. Technologies are popping up. Different ways of solving your problem show up along the way. So you have to stop and take this blue line has been something that has helped me out a lot. If I was going to do what I'm doing, solve the problem that I'm trying to solve today, how would I do it if I was starting from scratch and didn't have any basis to start it on? What new methods exist out there that someone else would apply to start that problem? Because for all you know, someone else is out there trying to solve the same problem with whatever's on the market. So is the method and the approach that you're using, is that still better than what someone just applying generic stuff off the street would be able to do? And has the market changed underneath you such that your solution is still relevant? Are there other ways to solve the problem you're trying to solve today that maybe they're not as good, but it gets the job done enough such that you would have trouble selling the value that you're bringing on top of that? It's a hard thing to do. This is the soul-searching piece of things, but it is important to do. So with the benefit of hindsight, I can go back and grade how well I've done on answering some of these questions and adjusting to the market changes. So I had my first startup. I'm going to write that off as poor execution and the exuberance of youth. We really didn't define a market. We defined some customers, and we were grossly underfunded. Learning experience. Prominent was successful. I painted that as this wonderful execution play, but we still required one major mid-course correction in the product set in order to keep ourselves relevant there. I'll talk about that in a minute. But we did have to tweak and adjust to the market in order to keep that company valid. Nauticus, we didn't pass the elevator pitch test. And I think that was the death of us. We tried to shoot for a market and expected the market was going to come up from underneath us. That's arrogance. It never did materialize there. ZV, like I said before, if we didn't listen to that market and adjust for it along the way, we would have been out of business 5 years ago because we completely misjudged the first set. The Prominent, we started off as a layer 2 switch. That was what the market needed. They were mature products. But while we're developing this layer 2 switch, layer 3 became kind of a market buzzword. People wanted to add those to products. The technology was advancing fast enough that it became possible to actually add layer 3 switching to the products. So the company was established on a successful execution of layer 2, but we had to have a layer 3 story along the way in order to keep it relevant and appear as though we were going to be a long-term player here. We established it on the execution of layer 2. We made it interesting to folks with the addition of layer 3. So about halfway through, we said this is coming. We took additional investment, set up a parallel development team to actually add that feature set to our products. So went out the door with the layer 2 switches, had the story for the layer 3. That's what made it attractive to the bigger, more strategic players, in this case Lucent, though there were a number of others that were involved in acquiring the company who were interested. ZV, this is the most acute and concrete example of adjusting mid-course to a market correction. The original consumer idea was all the stuff that you could get to via your browser, Hulu, Juice, the networks that were showing up. We wanted to get that to your TVs in your house. So you bought this box, you plugged it into your computer, you plugged it into the cable TV in your house, did a scan on the TVs, and you could just watch the internet like you were watching television. Neat idea. We set up relationships with Amazon and Best Buy. $4.99, kind of a problem. It's an expensive product. When we started selling. The ramp was great, and then it flattened off. It's like, uh-oh, we're in trouble. it turns out for a whole bunch of reasons. The cost was one of them. All the nerds bought the product, and then, we ran out of that market. But, we discovered that getting people to plug stuff into the cable TV in their house, this is not something that the average user can do. And so we were spending probably, for every 4 products we sold, we were spending about an hour and a half of support time on the phone. You can't scale that. And I found out all sorts of ways about how cables are built in America. But as we're looking at what's going on here, we noticed that there's one group of people that were buying the product and they were continuing to buy the product. I said, okay, well, we better figure out what's going on here. We were getting some support questions about what happens if you take the product and stack them up on top of each other, or can you run it vertically? And so we said, well, let's find out what they're doing with it. The savior here was NFL Sunday Ticket. It turns out that this was, what an NFL Sunday Ticket is you buy this from DirecTV if you're a bar. It gives you all 16 NFL games. They give you 16 set-top boxes, but today's sports bars, they'll have 100 televisions. You don't want to put a set-top box behind every television to manage it. So these guys will take 16 set-top boxes. They were then using our product to take that output and generate their own little cable TV head end. I said, okay, this is great. This was right at the start of digital television. They're phasing out analog broadcasting. These sports bars like Buffalo Wild Wings and whatnot were just taking off. Let's address this. And so we took what was a consumer product, and the first one on the upper left there, basically that's the consumer product, and actually the top row, those are the consumer product with a big wrapper around it to make it look like commercial grade equipment and fans, and we added some management interface. But it was really taking that same technology that they were already starting to apply to this problem, tailoring it more specifically to that market, and then going after it and addressing it as a valuable section of the market. And of course, since then, we've then evolved the product, and it actually is a real commercial product at this point with the high-end features that everyone's expecting. But had we stubbornly gone ahead and tried to reduce the cost or done something and continued to address the consumer thing, we would have gone out. We did take a look at those very first set of customers, which are the most valuable ones you're going to get, find out who's buying it and why, and go out and ask them. So you really have to mine through the data initially and recognize where you stand. So the flexibility, go like hell, get your product out, but you do have to be continuously looking at it. This first set of customers, they're going to be your most valuable. The ones that probably have the most value to you are the ones that are excited, look at your product, and then dismiss you. Those are the ones that you want to talk to. Why? What were they expecting, and what did they actually get, and how far off are you? Can you adjust what you're doing to make those two things match? And then don't be arrogant. That one I've learned along the way. Just more experience points, since we're the experience guy up here. The other thing you can't do is you can't build a company to be acquired. If your only exit in a company is acquisition, you'll fail. You have to build a well-rounded company that has a market on its own, can sell on its own, develop on its own. If your only way out is through being acquired, you won't be successful. Build it with a solid business plan. And then my big closer. I've had more fun doing this startup stuff than anything else I could possibly imagine doing. You have to be passionate doing this. You've got to jump in 100%. And then do whatever it takes. How hard could this be? Any problem you encounter, other people are solving it. Go after it and figure it out. You don't have all the answers. You're going to jump out, and you're going to think that you're the smart guy who started this company and gotten some money and some investors to invest, but you don't have all the answers. Just run with it, be flexible, and figure out who does, and work your way through it. The rewards, they're well worth it. I haven't, I think, ever written a resume. It's money, freedom, whatever you want. I thoroughly encourage the lifestyle. So thanks for listening to me yammer on for a while. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to come out and share some experience, and certainly we'll be around if anyone wants to ask questions or hear anything else. Thanks very much. So when we started, the whole focus, we're going to do this appliance for the consumers, and it was all focused on that. And so we weren't really thinking at that time of broadening and what the other applications might have been, because that seemed to us to be a big nut to crack. It would have been a huge market had we been able to get into Amazon and people buying us for under the Christmas tree, which was our goal then. We needed at the time the product, we needed a software application and a remote control to make it all work together. So we had a lot on our plate for very little money. So no, we were very focused on the one initial product. And it wasn't until we got close to the end, I said, okay, what else can we do with it? I kind of wish that we had spent more time thinking about what else we could do with it. But in this case, it became very evident. As you see your numbers go up and then level off, you're forced to think about what else we can do with this thing, because the alternative is nothing. Go home.
So now you've learned for the next one you start, you'll just do the Middle Bible and then progress.
Next one.
Oh, you know that is work.
Yeah. Well, actually, this one was a lot of fun because it was working with TV. A lot of fun stuff. Networking, yes, that's fun, and there's a lot of money in it. But when you're working with television applications, it's pretty cool. But yes, I do think that we have looked at other applications. So, we wanted to get established so we had a base to work from before we got into this. We had thought early on about taking this compression technology, which is really what it is. We're taking raw video and we're generating TV channels. We're taking a lot of information, smashing it into MPEG. We spent some time thinking, well, okay, if we do a consumer product, is there any military application for this, right? Because that's the same problem, as it turns out, that all these drones flying around have, right? You've got a huge amount of information up there, and then you have a very narrow channel to get that information back down to the ground to do the analysis. And so, as it turns out, we did actually court some government contracts for the technology along the way. This is sort of our doomsday scenario, right? If we couldn't make this consumer product play, maybe there was an application here. I'm glad we didn't have to go down that path, because we didn't know anything about that. But that was our alternative path back then. Thankfully, we had some very vocal customers who had a need, and they saw the solution to their problem with our product. And then we had the luck and fortune to actually recognize that they were buying and what they were doing. When they call up on the support line saying your product's overheating, it's like, well, what are you talking about? Well, when we stack them all up next to each other really tight, it doesn't work. Okay, why are you doing that? And then, poked into that to figure out what the application might be and could we do it better. So we're selling to consumers, and so folks are buying us on Amazon, and then we have a support number in the box. And so we had set up a formal through Plum Choice, I think, was a provider, some contract house to take the initial phone calls. So, as I said, for every 4 products that we're selling, we're doing an hour of phone support. We're hearing from a lot of customers about what's working well and not, and so we're getting the direct contact there. We also were able to, you get a lot of information from not your Amazon distributor, but if you're using the next tier up distributor, you have insight as to who they sell to. And so you can sort of get, if someone's buying 30 units at a whack of a consumer product, they're probably doing something with it that's not our intended function. And so you really have to be looking into that. It's that marketing function to try to figure out where your market's going, right? How do we know? Well, in my most recent case here, where we spun the company from being consumer to commercial, the decision was made for us. We wouldn't have been able to sustain the company and our burn rate at the income levels we were bringing in on the consumer market. So you had to do something or you were going to go under. Now, if we had to, thankfully, the modifications that we had to make it apply to new markets, we were able to do without dramatically altering the product. So it didn't require a whole new round of investment. With some packaging power, some software tweaks, we were able to take the core technology that we spent all the time and effort doing, repurpose it more for the commercial side of things. If we had to start from scratch, we would have closed the doors if it required a major thing. But we could recover all of the intellectual property that we had put into the product for this new application.